The South China Sea. $3.4 trillion in annual trade passes through here. 1/3 of all global shipping. Energy reserves worth billions. Fish stocks feeding millions of people across Asia. And it's disputed by 6 countries, all claiming overlapping territories. China claims most of it, the so-called 9-dash line. Vietnam claims the Paracels and Spratlys Islands, our ancestral waters. The Philippines claims based on proximity, our continental shelf. Malaysia, Brunei, Taiwan, all claiming the same water simultaneously. Military standoffs, Coast Guard vessels ramming each other. Artificial island construction, creating new territory from coral reefs. Fighter jet intercepts. Island militarization, potential for armed conflict. Everyone has maps. Everyone has historical records proving their case. Everyone claims this was always ours. Look at our historical maps. China says, 我们有2000年的历史. We have 2,000 years of history. Vietnam says, we administered these islands for centuries. Here's proof. The Philippines says, international law and geography, not ancient history, should decide. But here's the question nobody asks. What do the original maps actually show? Not modern interpretations, not nationalist narratives, the actual historical documents. Who claimed what, when, and how do we actually know? This is the story of the South China Sea's original maps, and why they don't prove what anyone thinks they do. Let's start with a fundamental problem in this dispute. China shows you ancient maps from 200 BCE, mentioning southern territories. Ming Dynasty records naming islands. They say, we controlled this for millennia. Vietnam shows you maps from the Nguyen Dynasty, showing Hoang Sa and Cheung Sa as Vietnamese territory. Administrative records, patrol logs. They say, we controlled these for centuries. The Philippines shows you Spanish colonial maps, American maps, UNCLOS zones. They say, geographic proximity and international law make these ours. Here's the problem. They're all showing different things entirely. Some maps show islands. Some show vague sea routes only. Some show territories that don't match modern geography at all. And, critically, ancient maps didn't mean the same thing as modern maps. When a Tang Dynasty map shows South Sea, does that mean sovereignty? Or just geographical knowledge that these features existed? When a Vietnamese record mentions Hoang Sa, does that mean territorial control? Or just awareness of dangerous reefs that sailors should avoid? This isn't simple at all. Let's examine the actual evidence chronologically. What did the original sources actually say in their time? Knowing islands exist does not equal claiming sovereignty over them. Han Dynasty China, 200 BCE to 220 CE, records describing southern maritime territories. But these were coastal areas, Guangdong, Hainan, northern Vietnam, not the South China Sea islands. Maps from this period didn't show individual islands in the South China Sea. Sitang means dangerous reefs. These are navigational warnings, not claims. They showed trade routes to Southeast Asia, dangerous waters to avoid. Did these descriptions indicate sovereignty? Tong and Song records mention reef systems and dangerous shallows. Navigational warnings for traders going to Southeast Asia, India, and Arabia. Did these descriptions indicate sovereignty? The records don't clearly say. They're maritime geography documentation, not territorial sovereignty claims. Think of it this way. Medieval European maps showing Iceland didn't mean Iceland was claimed. They were navigational knowledge, not territorial possession claims at all. Vietnam, Li, and Chun dynasties, 1009 to 1400 CE. Vietnamese records mention coastal islands near the mainland clearly. No clear records of Paracel or Spratlys Islands in this period. Later Vietnamese historians claim earlier awareness, but contemporary documents are sparse. Ming expeditions were tribute system demonstrations and trade missions, not colonial territorial expansion. All used South China Sea waters extensively for trade. Did they claim the islands? Records don't clearly indicate this, because uninhabited coral reefs had no strategic value in ancient times. No resources, no fresh water, no population to control, just navigational hazards. That changed later in the modern period. Ming Dynasty China, 1368 to 1644, is where China's claim strengthens. Ming naval expeditions, Zheng He, 1405 to 1433, massive fleets sailing through South China Sea. Records mention various islands, reefs, and navigation points throughout the sea. However, there is a clear distinction in the evidence provided. Critical distinction: these were naval expeditions, not territorial annexations. Zheng He's records describe geography. Don't say, "We claim this as Ming territory." When Columbus reached the Caribbean, Spain explicitly claimed it with flags and declarations. Ming records show no equivalent formal claims for South China Sea islands. Qing Dynasty China, 1644 to 1912. Qing maps show southern territories, but Qing maps often imprecise. Islands shown in wrong locations. Sizes exaggerated. No clear maritime boundaries drawn. Borders were land-based. Seas considered outer territories, not precisely bounded like land. Did Qing control these islands? No evidence of administration whatsoever. No garrisons, no tax collection, no governors, no permanent settlements. Knowing about islands is not the same as administering them. Vietnam, Nguyen Dynasty, 1802 to 1945. This is where Vietnam's claim strengthens. 1816, Emperor Gia Long establishes Hoang Sa Paracel Fleet, a naval unit tasked with patrolling and salvaging shipwrecks. 1838, Emperor Minmong sends expedition, erects sovereignty markers. These are administrative acts, not just geographical knowledge. Vietnam treating islands as territory to be managed and governed. Ambiguity analysis, scholarly examination, multiple interpretations, no definitive answer. European colonial period begins. Spanish claim Philippines. French colonize Vietnam. Colonial boundaries imprecise. Maritime features often marked vaguely or not at all. These are near us, should be ours. Islands considered minor. No resources, no population, little strategic value, pre-air age. This is where the modern mess truly begins. 1909. Qing dynasty sends naval expedition to Paracels, responding to foreign ships. Maps produced showing islands as Chinese territory, but Qing collapses in 1912. Republic of China inherits claim but lacks naval capacity. China in civil war. 1930s, France formally annexes Paracels and Spratlys, declares them French Indochina territory. China protests but can't respond, fighting Japanese invasion on mainland. Japan occupies South China Sea islands during World War II, uses them for military bases. All prior claims suspended. Japan treats islands as conquered military territory. 1945. Japan defeated. Allied powers must decide who gets the islands. Cairo and Potsdam declarations said Japan must return territories stolen from China. But which islands were actually stolen from China? Allies never clarified this. Post-World War II chaos, China in civil war, Vietnam fighting independence. Decolonization beginning. 1946-1947, Republic of China sends ships to South China Sea, garrisons islands, publishes maps. This is when the 11- line appears. ROC map with U-shaped line. Historical rights from ancient records supersede UNCLOS in South China Sea. UNCLOS is binding. Historical claims are irrelevant. What did this line mean? ROC didn't clearly explain. 1949, China splits. PRC controls mainland. ROC retreats to Taiwan. Both claim South China Sea. Vietnam claims Paracels and Spratlys based on Nguyen dynasty and French colonial history. We do not recognize the tribunal's jurisdiction. The ruling is null. Malaysia and Brunei claim continental shelf features. Taiwan continues ROC claims. Each occupation accompanied by historical artifacts. Always controlled this. But none had continuous administration going back centuries. Gaps everywhere. 1974. PRC attacks South Vietnamese forces in Paracels, takes complete control. Vietnam continues claiming Paracels but lacks military capacity to retake them. These maps prove awareness, but they do not prove governmental administration or other sovereignty indicators. Oil. All claimants intensify occupation. Construction. Runways, military bases, making claims permanent. PRC removes 2 dashes, leaving 9- line, but still doesn't explain what it means. 2016 arbitration ruling. 9- line has no legal basis under UNCLOS. The value transformation made these islands highly valuable. China rejects the ruling, refusing jurisdiction. And do historical maps matter? Under international law, mostly no. Under historical justice arguments, maybe. What do the original maps actually show? Not what anyone thinks they do. But the historical evidence is clear on this point. Here's what the original historical maps actually prove clearly. Multiple countries had historical knowledge going back centuries. Proven. This is proven. Some modern administration existed in 19th and 20th centuries. Documented. Nobody had continuous, clear, undisputed control back to ancient times. Gaps everywhere. Ancient maps showing islands don't prove territorial sovereignty or governmental control. Pre-modern maps didn't define maritime sovereignty zones. That's a modern concept. Original evidence is genuinely ambiguous. Each country has some basis, none definitive. South China Sea islands were mostly unclaimed throughout history. Marginal coral reefs. They became territorial prizes only when oil discovered and air power emerged. By then, multiple countries had historical arguments, none conclusive enough. This unresolved dispute isn't because someone's hiding evidence or lying about history. It's because the original maps and historical records don't provide clear answers, not because anyone's hiding evidence. The original maps don't answer modern questions. Ancient cartography fundamentally different from modern sovereignty mapping. Different purposes entirely. Historical knowledge does not equal legal ownership. This is the fundamental misunderstanding. And here's the final uncomfortable problem worth contemplating seriously. Even if we definitively proved someone controlled these islands in 1800 or 1400 or 200 BCE, does that actually determine who should control them today? In the modern world, international law says mostly no. UNCLOS based on geography, not history. But nations say yes. Sovereignty inherited through history. Ancestors control matters. The original maps of the South China Sea don't lie to us. They just don't answer the questions we're asking them today. And that's why, after centuries of map-making and historical research, we still don't know who's right about South China Sea sovereignty. The maps don't lie, they just don't answer our modern questions. Perhaps dialogue can resolve what maps alone cannot.